I remember that night all too well, the moment I realized my life was unraveling right in front of me. We were at a company event for my wife, Emma. The evening had been filled with small talk, laughter, and drinks, but the real action happened just before we left. I caught sight of a guy, Mark, who worked with Emma. He had this smug look on his face, like he knew something I didn't, and then, without a second thought, I decked him one solid punch right across his jaw. Everything froze for a moment before the chaos hit. People started swarming around us, some checking on Mark, others looking at me like I was the villain. But I didn't care about their opinions, I only cared about the truth. Mark didn't need to say much to provoke me. It was clear he had been with my wife. The way he looked at me, that small, cocky smile, said it all. Emma was beside herself, screaming at me over the noise. "Why did you hit him? What the hell, Jacob?" I kept my voice steady, though the anger bubbled underneath. "Because he slept with you." "Do I need more of a reason?" She looked at me like I was crazy. "He didn't say a word to you." "He didn't have to," I shot back. "I've known for weeks, Emma. I just didn't know it was him." She stood there, a mix of tears and fury in her eyes. "I can't believe you would accuse me like this." "Well, believe it," I said, grabbing her arm and pulling her out onto the hotel balcony to get away from the prying eyes and whispers. The cool night air did nothing to calm my nerves. "Tell me the truth, Emma. How long has this been going on?" She just stared at me, eyes wide, unable to speak, but her silence said enough. It was over for us. Whatever trust we had was shattered. But I needed to hear it from her, no matter how much it hurt. After dragging her out onto the balcony, I could feel my heart pounding, but I tried to keep my voice steady. Emma wiped her face, trying to compose herself, but the tears kept coming. "Jacob, this is insane. You're making things worse," she snapped, her voice cracking. I didn't let her play innocent. "Just tell me the truth, Emma. How long have you been with him?" Her lips quivered, and she stuttered, I haven't been with him. I would never do that to you." I couldn't take it anymore. "Stop lying. Do you think I haven't noticed the way you've been acting? You think I'm blind? I've known something was off for weeks. I didn't want to believe it, but here we are." Emma broke down, her words a messy jumble of sobs and denial. "I'm not lying. You're paranoid. I love you. I couldn't." I shook my head, lighting a cigar, the one she'd gifted me for my last birthday, a birthday that now seemed like a lifetime ago. That little cigar case meant a lot to me back then. It symbolized our connection, or at least what I thought was our connection. Now it just felt like a cruel reminder of how blind I had been. I pulled up a chair next to her, letting her cry, but I wasn't moved. "Emma, I've been putting the pieces together. It's all in the little stories you tell when we hang out with our friends. The jokes you make about me behind my back. The casual remarks that seem harmless but aren't. I didn't realize it at first, but those jokes. Those comments, they weren't just jokes. You were testing the waters, trying to get people on your side for when you left me." Her face twisted in confusion. "What are you talking about?" "Those were just harmless fun. You know I didn't mean any of it." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, right, it was all fun and games until it wasn't. You think I didn't notice the way you talked about me? How you'd laugh with the girls, making up stories about how I snore too loud or how I never help around the house? It's like you were setting the stage for something bigger. Like you were getting ready to paint me as the bad guy so you could walk away guilt-free." "I never meant it like that," she muttered, still in tears. I sighed, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me. "Emma, the truth is out now. You've been seeing him, haven't you? You've been with Mark, and now you've got to deal with it." Her silence said more than her words ever could. We sat there in silence for what felt like hours, but it was probably just a few minutes. The party was still going strong inside, and the noise drifted out onto the balcony, but it felt distant, like it was happening in another world. My world was crumbling right here, and there was no escaping it. Emma looked defeated, slumped in that wire chair, the same one she had been laughing from earlier in the evening. "Jacob, I never wanted it to end like this." "Well, it did," I replied coldly, blowing smoke from my cigar into the night air. "You're the one who made it end this way." She shook her head slowly, wiping her tears with shaky hands. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't plan any of this. I don't even know how it got this far." I leaned forward, looking her dead in the eye. "So what happened then? You just fell into his arms one day? Or did it take weeks of flirting, late-night texts, and stolen moments. Walk me through it, Emma. Tell me how you went from being my wife to being his mistress. She winced at the word mistress, like it stung her more than the reality of what she had done. But I wasn't about to let her off that easy. I needed her to admit it. I needed the truth, even if it tore me apart. I don't know, Jacob, she said quietly. It started slow at first. It was just harmless conversation. I swear it was. He was easy to talk to, and I didn't think it would go anywhere. And yet here we are, I shot back. It clearly went somewhere, didn't it? She nodded, her voice barely a whisper now. It was just once. At first I felt terrible about it, but once I crossed that line I couldn't go back. I was already guilty, so what was the point in stopping? Hearing those words, the final nail in the coffin of our marriage, was like a punch to the gut. I'd suspected it for weeks, but hearing her admit it out loud felt different. It made it real in a way that I couldn't ignore anymore. So you just kept doing it? I said, my voice flat, emotionless. You kept cheating because in your mind you were already a cheater. She nodded again, her face twisted with guilt. I didn't know how to stop. I hated myself for it. But I couldn't face you. I didn't know how to tell you. And Marky didn't mean anything. Not really. He wasn't even someone I cared about. Yet you risked everything for him, I replied bitterly. You threw away our marriage, our life, our future. And for what? For some guy who doesn't even matter. She sobbed harder now, but I was past the point of feeling sorry for her. I was numb to her tears, numb to her pain, and numb to the wreckage of our life together. I couldn't find it in myself to care anymore. The cold air of the night seemed to make everything clearer, sharper. I sat there, still puffing on the cigar she'd given me, watching Emma crumble in front of me. It was strange. I'd always imagined that if something like this happened, I'd be filled with rage. But at that moment, I felt nothing but a dull ache, a hollow sort of pain that I knew would stick with me long after tonight. So what now, I asked, not expecting any real answer from her. You going to run off with him, or are you just going to keep stringing me along? She wiped at her face, her eyes puffy from crying. I don't want to be with him, Jacob. I never did. He was just, I don't even know how to explain it. I was confused, and he was there. I gave a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Confused? You think that's an excuse? You think that makes it any better? You still did it, Emma? You still chose him. I didn't choose him, she whispered. I just wanted an escape. I felt trapped, like everything in my life was planned out, and I had no control. Our marriage, our daughter, our future. It all felt like something I had to live through, not something I wanted anymore. Her words hit me harder than any punch could. She wasn't just confessing to cheating, she was admitting that she didn't want the life we had built together. And worse, she had felt this way for a while, maybe even longer than I realized. You felt trapped, I asked, incredulous. Emma, I've always given you everything. You've had freedom, love, support, whatever you wanted, you got. How could you feel trapped? She glanced down at her hands, avoiding my eyes. I didn't mean it like that. I just meant, I don't know, Jacob. I can't explain it. It's not your fault. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Then, whose fault is it, Emma? Because it sure as hell isn't mine. I didn't make you cheat. I didn't make you lie. That was all you. She finally looked at me then, her face filled with regret. I know, I'm sorry, Jacob. I really am. Sorry doesn't fix this. I said quietly, sorry doesn't bring back the trust, the love, or the life we had. You can't just say you're sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. She nodded, clearly knowing that no amount of apologies would change the damage done. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't know how to fix this. I exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of her words settle in. There was no fixing this. She'd broken us, shattered everything we had with one selfish act. And now, here we were, trying to figure out what was left. As we sat there, the realization washed over both of us that there was no going back. Emma wiped her face again, struggling to find the right words, but there weren't any. Nothing she could say would make me feel better or undo the damage. I didn't mean for any of this, she muttered, her voice weak. I was afraid of being alone, of losing everything. But I guess I've lost it all anyway. Yeah, Emma, you did, I said, my voice cold. You've lost me. And now we've got to figure out how we untangle our lives, How we explain this to our daughter, that part hurt the most, thinking about our little girl, Lily. She was only 3 years old, innocent, with no clue that her mom had just blown our family apart. How was I supposed to look her in the eyes and tell her that her parents were over? "I'll always love Lily," Emma said, as if that would solve anything. "I know I messed up, but I'll still be there for her." "Will you?" I asked, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Because you weren't thinking about her when you cheated. You weren't thinking about her when you lied. You were only thinking about yourself." She looked away, her hands twisting in her lap. "I'll make it right with her, Jacob, I swear." I wasn't sure how she planned to do that, but I knew one thing: Lily deserved better, and if Emma couldn't be that for her, then I sure as hell would. "You can have your freedom, Emma," I said, my voice final. "That's what you wanted, right? To not feel trapped anymore? Well, here it is. I'm done. You don't have to be with me anymore. You can be alone, just like you were so afraid of." Her face crumpled, and she started crying again, but I didn't feel sorry for her anymore. I had nothing left to give her. She'd made her choice, and now she had to live with it. I stood up from the chair, my legs stiff but my mind made up. "I'm leaving. You can stay here, deal with your company and your new reputation. They'll probably find out about what happened tonight if they haven't already." She flinched at that, and I knew it wasn't just our marriage that was over. Her career, the thing she'd worked so hard for, might be on the line too. But I didn't care. She'd made her bed. "Jacob, please," she started, but I held up a hand to stop her. "No, Emma, I'm done. You've said all you needed to say, and I've heard enough. I'm taking Lily, and I'm filing for divorce. I'm not going to fight with you over it, but this is it. We're over." She nodded, defeated. "I understand." I left her sitting there, broken and alone, just like she said she'd feared. Maybe that was the worst punishment of all, letting her have what she thought she wanted. She had destroyed our family, and now she would have to live with that. As I walked back into the noisy crowd, I realized that my life was never going to be the same. I'd be starting over, not just as a man, but as a father, raising Lily on my own. I wasn't sure how I'd manage it, but I knew one thing: I'd give my daughter the love and stability she deserved, even if Emma couldn't. The police showed up not long after, but by then I was calm, ready to face whatever came next. Emma bailed me out the next morning, but it was the last time I ever saw her. The divorce went through quietly, and she faded from my life like a bad memory. In the end, it wasn't just the betrayal that hurt, it was realizing how little she valued the life we had built. But I learned something through it all: I could survive this. I could pick up the pieces and move forward, even if it was without her. Lily became my world, and we found our new normal. It wasn't easy, but it was real. And as for Emma? Well, she got what she wanted: her freedom. But freedom always comes at a price, and I made sure she paid it. That's how it all ended: a punch, a confession, and a broken marriage. It wasn't the life I had planned, but maybe it was the life I needed to see the truth. In the end, sometimes love isn't enough to keep people together, and sometimes you're better off walking away. Dear listeners, thank you for your incredible support and for tuning in to my stories on YouTube. Your enthusiasm and feedback mean the world to me. Stay tuned for more exciting tales. Warm regards.